Beneath your feet in ancient halls lies a secret language written in stone. For centuries, master artisans embedded hidden codes within the intricate patterns of marble floors and mosaic pavements. This journey will reveal how to see these historic spaces in a completely new light. We will uncover why a labyrinth in a medieval cathedral might be more than a spiritual path, and what complex mathematical truths could be locked within the tiles of a Moorish palace. By the end, you will never look at a historic floor the same way again. What hidden message do you think is waiting to be found just beneath the surface? Our brains are hardwired to find faces in clouds and stories in the stars. This deep-seated need to find order is the very key that unlocks the first layer of the mystery. When an ancient artisan laid out a complex geometric design, they were speaking a fundamental human language. Think about the last time you looked at a repeating pattern on wallpaper or fabric. Your mind naturally follows the lines, connects the dots, and seeks the logic behind the arrangement. That feeling of satisfaction when you find the rhythm is your brain celebrating a solved puzzle. For our ancestors, this process was infinitely more profound. The patterns woven into their floors were a direct reflection of their understanding of the cosmos, a belief that the same mathematical order governing the heavens should be mirrored here on Earth. A perfect circle might represent the eternal cycle of life and death, while an endless knot could symbolize the interconnectedness of all things. These were not mere decorations. They were philosophical statements carved in stone, meant to be absorbed subconsciously with every step. The immense effort required, the years of labor by skilled craftsmen, points to a purpose far beyond aesthetics. They were building a permanent, unspoken dialogue with the future, embedding their most cherished truths into the most durable canvas they had, the very ground beneath them. So the next time you see a historic tiled floor, do not just glance at its beauty. Ask what puzzle it is inviting you to solve. Walk directly into the heart of Chartres Cathedral, and your gaze is drawn downward to a massive circle of stone. This is the Labyrinth, a winding path coiled within a space nearly 40 feet across. To simply call it a pattern feels inadequate, for this is a journey frozen in stone. The common explanation is that it served as a substitute pilgrimage, a path for the faithful to trace on their knees when a voyage to the Holy Land was an impossible dream. Yet this interpretation feels almost too simple, like describing a symphony as merely a collection of notes. Why would medieval artisans invest such incredible effort into a design of such precise complexity if its only purpose was to be crawled upon? The geometry itself whispers of a deeper secret. Every turn, every ratio between the paths aligns with principles of sacred geometry, a language of numbers and shapes believed to reflect the divine order of creation. Some researchers quietly suggest these circuits mirror the steps of an alchemical transformation, a spiritual recipe for turning the base lead of the human soul into the gold of enlightenment. Each walk to the center and back out again could represent a death and rebirth, a symbolic shedding of the self, so we are left with a profound question. Was this labyrinth a physical activity, or was it a sophisticated philosophical machine, its code written not in words but in the very act of movement? The true purpose may be multifaceted, designed to meet each seeker at their own level of understanding. A different kind of code awaits in the sun-drenched courtyards of the Alhambra. Here, the stone floors and walls shimmer with an explosion of geometric stars, interlocking polygons, and weaving ribbons of color that seem to continue forever. This is the second great mystery, a world where art and mathematics become indistinguishable. While the labyrinth at Chartres invites a physical journey, these Islamic patterns challenge the mind. They are a silent, visual symphony composed with only a compass and a straight edge. Forbidden from depicting human or animal forms, these artisans turn to the pure language of the universe, geometry, to express the infinite nature of the divine. Every repeating, radiating shape is a deliberate philosophical statement about unity, order, and a cosmos without end. But look closer beyond the sheer beauty. How could craftsmen working centuries ago achieve such flawless, complex tessellations without a single misstep? The secret lies in a hidden grid, an underlying scaffold of circles and lines that acts as a master recipe. Each stunning star is born from the intersection of perfect circles, a technique passed from master to apprentice, a living library of form held not in books but in muscle memory and trained eyes. Some scholars now quietly propose that these patterns are more than just decoration. They might be intricate diagrams of advanced mathematical concepts, perhaps even early explorations of ideas that would much later be formalized as calculus. Could the swirling tessellations encode the value of pi or chart the subtle movements of celestial bodies? The perfection we see is not an accident. It is the result of a profound scientific and spiritual understanding, a code that uses symmetry and repetition to convey truths that were considered too sacred for words. This artistic tradition challenges everything we assume about the limits of medieval science, presenting us with a breathtaking paradox, a timeless secret whispered in the language of shape and number. But the desire to encode the cosmos was not confined to the abstract patterns of geometry. Journey now to the villas of the Roman elite, where sprawling mosaic floors tell stories of gods, heroes, and daily life. Yet, hidden within these vivid scenes of hunting and feasting lies our third great mystery. Scholars examining these intricate artworks have noticed something astonishing. The seemingly random scattering of stars in a night sky scene, or the specific arrangement of constellations, is often not random at all. It is a deliberate and accurate celestial map. One particular mosaic might depict the exact alignment of the stars on the night a powerful emperor was born, forever cementing his divine right to rule in stone and glass. Another could commemorate the founding of a great city, its heavenly portrait laid into the floor of its most important building. Think of the implications. A Roman senator walking through his home was not merely crossing a beautiful floor, he was traversing a specific moment in time, a frozen horoscope that connected his earthly power directly to the heavens. This transforms these mosaics from simple decorations into profound historical documents. They were permanent calendars, celestial diaries, and political propaganda, all fused into one stunning artifact. The message was clear: the owner of this house was a man whose destiny was written in the stars and now, literally, set under his feet. So we must ask, how many other Roman floors hold these hidden dates, waiting for a modern eye to decipher their silent, starry code? The hands that carved these cosmic maps and geometric puzzles belonged to masters of a silent craft. These were not simple laborers, but members of secretive guilds, sworn brothers who held their knowledge as tightly as a king holds his gold. Their tools were humble: a chisel, a hammer, a wooden straightedge, but the techniques they wielded were anything but simple. Every piece of stone was a word, and every color a subtle inflection in their hidden language. Imagine the process. First, a master designer would scratch the full, intricate design onto a flat plaster base. This was the original manuscript, the complete code. Then the cutters would take over, using iron saws and abrasive sand to slice marble and stone into thousands of perfectly shaped pieces. this was not random work. The specific veins in the marble, the subtle variations in hue between different stones, all of it was selected with a purpose that went far beyond mere decoration. A red tile from Egypt might be placed next to a green one from Greece, not just for contrast, but to mark a boundary or signify a specific chapter in their hidden text. The final act was the setting, carefully pressing each piece into a bed of mortar, following the scratched lines on the plaster below. Once the mortar set and the surface was polished, the guide, the original drawing, was forever erased. The code was now permanent, visible, yet its key was known only to the initiated. This entire ritual of creation, from the first scratch to the last polish, was a perfect system for concealing messages. Guilds frequently used secret symbols to mark their territory, to boast of their skill to other craftsmen who could read the signs, or to embed protective charms into their work. A slight deviation in a repeating pattern, a unique tile placed where only a fellow mason would notice it, these were the signatures and the signals. The floor itself became a living document of their brotherhood, a testament to their ingenuity written in the most durable ink the world has ever known, stone. In the hushed splendor of a Byzantine church, even the ground you stand on is a page from a sacred text. Here, the mystery shifts from cosmic maps and geometric puzzles to a world of profound theological symbols, embedded directly into the marble pavement. This is opus sectile, an art form of breathtaking precision where countless pieces of colored stone are cut and inlaid to form intricate images. While the walls and ceilings blaze with icons, the floor offers a more subtle, yet equally powerful sermon. Familiar symbols like the cross or the Chi-Rho are immediately recognizable, declarations of faith meant for every eye. But the true code begins with the other creatures that walk this stone garden. A peacock with its iridescent tail is not merely a beautiful bird. It is a promise, a symbol of immortality and the incorruptible soul, based on the ancient belief that its flesh never decayed. A lamb represents the sacrifice of Christ, a quiet, potent reminder with every step. Yet the most intriguing messages are not in these clear images, but in the patterns that seem, at first glance, purely decorative. Endless knots with no beginning and no end, and circles that weave in and out of one another in an unbreakable dance. To the initiated, these were not just patterns. They were complex diagrams of divine concepts, perhaps a visual argument about the nature of the Holy Trinity. Three distinct entities bound in one inseparable unity. The very path a worshipper would take during a service was part of this layered communication. The orientation of a pattern, leading the eye and the body toward the altar, could mirror the soul's journey from earthly confusion to divine clarity. A complex not placed at a specific point might be a silent warning against a popular heresy of the time, a theological error visually untangled for those who knew how to look. Decoding this flaw requires more than just recognizing a symbol. It demands we understand the fierce intellectual and spiritual battles that defined the Byzantine world. What appears as abstract beauty is actually a captured echo of ancient debates about the fundamental nature of God and salvation. The artisans were not just craftsmen. They were theologians with a chisel, embedding the deepest truths of their faith into the one surface everyone would walk upon, a constant, tangible reminder of the path to eternity. This philosophical quest for cosmic order reaches one of its purest expressions not in grand cathedrals, but in the sun-bleached stones of ancient Greece. Long before the intricate labyrinths of Chartres, the Greeks, and particularly the secretive followers of Pythagoras, held a radical belief. They were convinced that numbers and geometry were not just tools for measurement, but the very fabric of reality, the hidden language of the cosmos itself. It is almost impossible to believe that such a profound world you would not be etched into their most sacred spaces, their temples. And the evidence is right there, underfoot, in the patterns of the lithostroton, the stunning mosaic floors made from countless black and white pebbles. At first glance, these might look like simple, elegant checkerboards, but look with the eyes of a Pythagorean initiate. The arrangement is never random. The ratios between the black and white sections, the proportions of the overall design, they consistently echo the golden ratio and other sacred geometric sequences. This is where the theory becomes truly fascinating. Some researchers propose that these floors were not just decorated with pretty patterns, they were physical textbooks. A complex interlocking design could be a direct, walkable representation of the Pythagorean theorem, a harmonic ratio made manifest in stone. Think about the implication. To walk across this floor was not merely to move from one side of a room to the other. It was to physically traverse a diagram of universal law. Each step would have been a silent reinforcement of the idea that human beings could and should live in harmony with the mathematical perfection of the cosmos. The temple was not just a building to house a god. It was a tuned instrument, and the floor was its soundboard, vibrating with a silent, geometric frequency intended to resonate with the soul of the visitor. This transforms a simple act of walking into a philosophical exercise, a deliberate alignment of the individual with the eternal. Yet a lion carved on a Roman floor does not carry the same meaning as one woven into a Persian carpet. To truly read these stone texts, we need their dictionary, a field of study known as iconography. This is the art of understanding symbols, the visual shorthand that cultures used to convey complex ideas. Across different times and places, humanity has agreed upon certain images to represent universal concepts. In early Christian catacombs and floors, a simple fish was not a menu item. It was a secret sign for Jesus Christ, a code born from the Greek word for fish, an acronym for a profound theological statement. In the traditions of the East, a lotus flower blooming from muddy water was never just a plant. It was a powerful emblem of spiritual purity rising from the material world, a symbol of rebirth and enlightenment. Even a creature as common as a lion could shift its meaning entirely based on its surroundings. In one context, it might be the sun god radiating power. In another, it is the evangelist Mark, his gospel roaring across the continents. But identifying a single symbol is only the first step, like learning the alphabet. The true meaning emerges when we see how these symbols interact. Are they telling a story, a sequence of tiles showing a lamb, a shepherd, and then a crown could chart the entire Christian narrative of sacrifice and redemption? Or do they form a hidden picture? Imagine a mosaic where individual symbols of a peacock, a vine, and a star seem scattered at random. But if you were to stand on a specific spot, perhaps the bishop's chair, they suddenly align to form a single, colossal image of a heavenly city. This is the heart of iconographic analysis. It forces us to ask not just what we are looking at, but where we are standing when we look. Every color, every curve, and every spatial relationship was a deliberate decision by the artist. By learning this visual language, we stop being passive observers and become active readers of a story that has been waiting centuries for our eyes. Far to the north, in the smoky warmth of a Viking longhouse, the floor itself might have been a map to the wider world. Archaeologists carefully brushing away centuries of soil have begun to notice something remarkable. The earthen floors of these great halls are not blank canvases. They are often marked with deliberate arrangements of colored stones, set in lines that form precise grids, or patterned with wooden planks laid in distinct sequences. At first, these might be dismissed as simple decoration, a chieftain's attempt at domestic refinement. but given the Vikings' legendary mastery of the open ocean, a far more intriguing possibility emerges. What if these patterns were a form of frozen navigation, a terrestrial echo of their celestial wayfinding? Imagine a seasoned navigator, a master of reading the sunstone and the stars, walking a young apprentice across the hall. He would not point to a parchment chart, for those were rare and precious. Instead, he might use the lines on the floor. This line, he could say, points to the entrance where the midwinter sun rises. That cluster of dark stones marks the summer solstice position of a specific star, visible through the smoke hole directly above. The entire floor could have been a giant, durable training aid, a symbolic representation of sea routes etched into the very ground they lived on. It transforms the concept of a home from a mere shelter into a place of constant learning and remembrance. Every feast, every family gathering, took place upon a diagram of their world. The floor was a calendar marking the turning seasons for planting and raiding, a compass pointing the way to distant shores, and a spiritual anchor connecting their domestic life to the vast cosmos they braved. This was not art for art's sake. It was functional knowledge made permanent, a silent, stony mentor ensuring that the secrets of the sea would never be forgotten. The quest for hidden order leads us from Viking longhouses to the polished halls of the Italian Renaissance, a world obsessed with rediscovering ancient secrets. A new kind of patron emerged, wealthy merchants and princes who were not just collectors of art but avid seekers of esoteric wisdom, often practicing alchemy in private laboratories. For them, the floor became more than a spiritual map. It transformed into a laboratory blueprint. They commissioned master craftsmen to create breathtaking floors of paillette d'or, a technique of inlaying hard, precious stones into a solid base. At a glance, these are simply magnificent displays of wealth and artistry, but look closer at the symbolic vocabulary. A phoenix rising from flames is not just a mythic bird, it is the alchemical symbol for rebirth and the completion of the great work. A dragon swallowing its own tail, the Ouroboros, represents the primordial matter from which all creation springs. The sun and moon, often placed in opposition, signify the essential masculine and feminine principles that must be united. The sequence of materials themselves tells a silent story. A path might begin with dark, black marble, representing the initial stage of putrefaction and blackening, known as nigrido. It then transitions into brilliant white marble, symbolizing purification and whitening, or albedo. The journey culminates in a fiery red porphyry, the ultimate goal of rubedo, the reddening that signified the creation of the philosopher's stone. This was not random decoration, it was a deliberate, walkable formula. So we must ask, was a nobleman simply admiring his beautiful floor, or was he slowly, meditatively tracing the steps of a spiritual and physical transformation with each passing day? The floor was a constant, silent guide, a permanent diagram for an initiate's inner journey, a secret recipe for turning the soul to gold, laid bare for all to see, yet understood by only a chosen few. This invisible blueprint was the sacred geometry, the master code that gave the floor its hidden power. Think of it as the architectural soul of the space, a set of divine proportions believed to echo the very structure of reality. Before a single stone was ever cut, a master designer would begin with a circle, the symbol of heaven and unity. Then, using only a compass and straightedge, they would perform a ritual of creation known as squaring the circle. They would construct a square with the same perimeter as that initial circle, a feat mathematically impossible yet spiritually profound. This act of marrying the circle, the heavens with the square, the earth, was the foundational gesture. It established the sacred proportions that would govern every element of the building, from the height of the arches right down to the patterns under your feet. The resulting shape, the vesica piscis, is the almond-like form created when two circles of the same size overlap. You see this shape everywhere once you know to look for it, in the halos of saints in medieval paintings, in the ancient symbol of the fish, and most importantly, radiating outward as the foundational grid for countless floor designs. From this single act of geometric genesis, more complex patterns would bloom. The seed of life, the flower of life, these interlocking circles are not just pretty designs. They are diagrams of creation itself, showing how all life expands from a single, central source. And then there is the Fibonacci sequence, that famous series of numbers where each is the sum of the two before it. This ratio appears in the spiral of a seashell, the arrangement of leaves on a stem, and the perfect proportions of the nautilus. When this same spiral is translated into the growth pattern of a mosaic, it does more than please the eye. It makes the floor feel alive, as if it is a living, breathing extension of the natural world. So a walk across such a floor was never just a physical movement. It was a journey through a condensed universe, a silent meditation on the hidden order that binds the cosmos together. The space was not merely decorated with sacred geometry. It was constructed from the inside out to be sacred geometry, a resonant chamber for the human spirit. Long before sacred geometry echoed in Gothic cathedrals, the Minoans of Crete were whispering their own secrets into stone. Their sprawling palace at Knossos is a world of vibrant color and motion, where even the ground underfoot pulses with a mysterious energy. The pavements here are a stark contrast to the rigid order of later empires. They swirl with dynamic spirals, coil into labyrinthine paths, and ripple with stylized octopuses and flowing lilies. This is not the language of mathematical precision, but of life itself, a celebration of the natural world. And it is a language we have almost entirely forgotten. The Minoan written script, known as Linear A, has stubbornly resisted all attempts at translation. Its meaning is lost. This forces us to ask a profound question. If we cannot read their words, can we learn to read their art? Some researchers now suggest that these floor patterns are not merely decorative. They might be a parallel language, a symbolic lexicon carved directly into the pavement. The spiral is the most persistent and puzzling of these symbols. It appears everywhere. Could it represent the endless journey of life and death, a cycle as continuous as its coiled form? Was it a prayer to the power of the sea, whose waves curl and crash in the same relentless rhythm? Or perhaps in the darkest corners of the palace, these spiraling paths were meant as a map of the terrifying underworld, a guide for the soul's final voyage. Without a Rosetta Stone for their imagery, we are left walking in silence through a gallery of beautiful, frantic questions. Every spiral is a sentence we cannot read, every labyrinth a story we cannot follow. These floors are the last, vibrant breath of a sophisticated culture, a visual poem whose rhythm we can feel, but whose words remain just beyond our grasp, locked forever in the colorful stones of Crete. A castle's great hall floor was far more than a surface to walk upon. It was a declaration of power written in clay and glaze. In the flickering light of 1,000 feasts, the intricate tilework would reveal a complex language of heraldry, each shield and beast a word in a silent, political speech. At first glance, these are simply the coats of arms of the ruling family, a bold statement of identity. But the true code lies in the arrangement. The largest, most central shield declared the Lord's own lineage, but the shields surrounding it were never placed at random. To the right, you might find the arms of a powerful ally, a statement of a military pact solidified over wine and war. To the left, the emblem of a noble house recently joined by marriage, a permanent record of a union that brought land, wealth, and a new bloodline into the fold. A careful observer could read the entire history of a dynasty in the sequence of tiles, from a hard-won victory commemorated by a captured enemy's standard, to a subtle claim on a distant territory whose symbol was now embedded underfoot, a constant, quiet assertion of a right to rule. This was high-stakes storytelling, where a misplaced shield or an incorrect color could be seen as a grave insult or a foolish boast. Beyond the politics of man, there was a deeper layer of meaning in the symbols themselves. The heraldic creatures populating these floors were not chosen merely for their ferocity. A griffin, part eagle and part lion, was the guardian of the divine, a protector against evil spirits. A dragon was not just a monster, it was a symbol of supreme power and wisdom. Even the colors held potent meaning, with red signifying warrior strength and blue representing truth and loyalty. To walk across this floor was to traverse a living document, a visual chronicle of alliances, ancestry, and ambition. It was a constant reminder to every guest, ally, and rival of exactly where they stood, both literally and within the intricate, unyielding hierarchy of feudal power. The floor was the ultimate proof of a family's legitimacy, a story of past glory and future promise, laid down for all to see and none to dispute. The geometric floor of the Basilica of San Vitale is a silent guide for the soul. While golden mosaics of emperors and saints shimmer overhead, the path beneath your feet is a complex dance of interlocking circles and squares. This is not random ornamentation. The design compels you to move in a specific way, subtly directing your journey through the sacred space. The meandering patterns might lead you on a circuitous route, forcing a contemplative slowing of pace before you approach the altar. Art historians have long pondered a tantalizing possibility. Could these stone paths be a literal map of the soul's journey toward salvation, with every turn and intersection representing a spiritual challenge or a moment of grace? The center of the floor holds the greatest mystery. There, the geometry often coalesces into a magnificent, intricate pattern. Some scholars see this as a direct representation of the heavenly Jerusalem, the divine city described in the Book of Revelation, rendered not in words but in stone. This would mean the entire floor is a profound theological statement. You begin your walk on the periphery, in the chaos of the earthly realm, and with each step guided by the sacred geometry, you are led inward toward the center, toward divine order and eternal peace. The floor and the ceiling mosaics are not separate artworks. They are in constant, silent dialogue. The heavenly court depicted above is the destination, and the floor is the very path you must take to reach it. This transforms a simple walk through a church into a symbolic pilgrimage. Every visitor, whether a 6th century worshipper or a modern tourist, becomes a part of this unspoken ritual, their physical movement a reenactment of a spiritual quest. San Vitale presents a perfect puzzle, a place where faith is not just seen but physically traversed. Even the stones themselves were listening in the ancient theater. While the soaring semicircle of seats gets most of the credit for the legendary acoustics, the stage floor holds its own silent secret. This circular orchestra, where actors performed and the chorus danced, was far more than a simple platform. The intricate patterns of stone slabs under their feet may have been a finely tuned acoustic instrument. Imagine the precise geometry of these layouts, interlocking circles and radiating lines carved from resonant marble. Some researchers now propose that these were not arbitrary designs. The specific arrangement, the width of the gaps between stones, and the choice of materials could have worked together to catch the sound waves from a performer's voice. Instead of scattering randomly and creating a muddled echo, the sound would be subtly channeled, reflected, and amplified, pushing the voice clearly upward through thousands of spectators. This was not magic, It was a sophisticated application of physics, an ancient code for manipulating the behavior of sound itself. The craftsmen who laid these floors possessed an empirical mastery of acoustics, a knowledge gained through centuries of observation and refinement, long before the science had a formal name. They understood how a specific shape could bounce a whisper into a declaration, ensuring that every word of the play, every note of the music, reached the furthest row with stunning clarity. So we must ask, did the true genius of the ancient sound system lie not just above, but directly beneath the performer's feet? The floor itself might have been the first and most crucial amplifier, a technological marvel written in stone for the benefit of every single person in the audience. The universe was not a distant concept for our ancestors, but a living presence they sought to mirror in their very homes. This profound connection between the heavens and the earth was literally set in stone, with entire buildings designed as symbolic universes. The most fundamental expression of this idea is written in the simple shapes of the floors themselves. A perfect circular floor often represented the dome of the sky, the celestial vault rotating above. A square or rectangular foundation, by contrast, stood for the four corners of the earth, the solid and stable world of human experience. When these two shapes were combined with a circle nested within a square, the design became a powerful statement of the cosmos itself, a miniature model of the heavens embracing the earth. But the alignment of these patterns held an even deeper secret. A mosaic's central axis might be carefully oriented so that on the dawn of the summer solstice, the first ray of sunlight would pierce a window and strike a specific tile, flooding a golden path across the floor. This was not a coincidence. It was a calendar, a clock, and a declaration of harmony with the cosmic cycle. The center point of these designs was perhaps the most sacred spot of all. Across countless cultures, this was seen as the axis mundi, the world axis, the spiritual pole that connected the earthly realm to the celestial spheres above and the underworld below. To stand at that center was to be at the very heart of creation, a point of ultimate connection and power. This transforms these spaces from mere buildings into profound philosophical instruments. Every step across such a floor was a walk across a personal map of the cosmos, a constant, tangible reminder that the order of the stars above was intimately woven into the very ground beneath their feet. The echo of a bouncing rubber ball would have been a sacred sound in a Mesoamerican Ballcourt. These were not stadiums for sport, but portals to the cosmos, and the floor was the most critical element of all. Stretching between two sloping walls, the long, narrow playing alley was a carefully defined sacred space, its surface often made of polished plaster that gleamed under the fierce sun. This was no ordinary floor. Embedded within it were symbolic markers, stone discs or carved depressions that served as focal points for a drama far greater than any game. The central ring, high on the wall, is often mistakenly seen as a simple goal, like a basketball hoop. Its true purpose was infinitely more profound. Many researchers believe it represented a portal to the underworld, or perhaps the sun itself, a celestial body to be conquered or guided. The entire game, a reenactment of the myth of the hero, twins from the sacred Popol Vuh, was a battle against the lords of death, a ritual essential for the very continuation of the world. The players, using only their hips and thighs to strike a heavy rubber ball, were not athletes in our modern sense. They were priests and warriors acting out a cosmic struggle. The ball itself was a symbol of the sun's journey across the sky, and its movement across the plaster floor traced a path of life, death, and hoped for rebirth. The specific patterns on that floor, the placement of the markers, dictated the ritual's flow, turning every bounce and every ricochet into a sentence in a prayer. To step onto that court was to enter a myth, to become part of a story that ensured the sun would rise again. The outcome of the game was a matter of divine consequence, a question of whether order would triumph over chaos for another cycle. Can we even begin to comprehend the weight that rested upon that polished plaster surface, a stage where the fate of the world was quite literally in play? High on the Tibetan plateau, where the air is thin and the silence profound, the stone floors of ancient monasteries hold a different kind of key. Here, the mandala is rendered not in fragile, temporary sands, but etched permanently into the rock beneath your feet. This is a cosmic diagram made solid, a vibrant, complex cipher of the entire Buddhist universe. Every color is a deliberate choice, a vibration of spiritual energy. Every symbol is a profound concept, and every deity positioned within the intricate circles and squares represents a specific aspect of enlightenment. To the uninitiated, it is a breathtaking geometric artwork, but for a practitioner, this floor is a complete spiritual textbook and a sophisticated tool for inner transformation. The code is not hidden away. It is laid bare, a map offered to those willing to learn its language. The path to understanding is not one of intellectual decryption, but of physical and mental immersion. A monk does not simply look at the mandala. They move through it, their footsteps tracing a prescribed route across the sacred geometry. Each step is a meditation, each circuit a journey through the stages of consciousness, from the outer realms of illusion toward the inner sanctum of pure awareness. The lotus flower at the center is not just a symbol of purity, it is the destination of a long and disciplined pilgrimage of the mind. This living tradition elevates the concept of a coded floor to its highest purpose. The message is not a secret to be hoarded, but a profound truth to be walked, breathed, and ultimately realized from within. So how do we begin to translate these silent stone texts today? We now possess tools that would seem like pure magic to the artisans who laid these floors. One of the most powerful is photogrammetry, a process where hundreds of overlapping photographs of a single floor are stitched together by a computer to create an impossibly detailed three-dimensional model. This digital replica can then be manipulated in ways the original never could. A researcher can lie down virtually on the surface, viewing the pattern from an ant's perspective to follow a line's journey. They can fly directly above it, seeing the complete geometric order in a way no one standing on the floor ever could, stripping away centuries of wear to examine the design in its pristine, intended state. This is paired with multispectral imaging, a technique that uses light beyond the range of human vision. A mosaic that appears to be a uniform tan to our eyes might, under infrared light, suddenly reveal the ghostly outline of a preparatory sketch, the original guidelines scratched by the master's hand. Faded pigments, completely invisible now, can fluoresce, betraying their original vibrant colors and restoring lost details to a symbol. Yet the most abstract decoding happens inside a computer's processor. Complex algorithms can analyze a sprawling Islamic tessellation, measuring every angle and line to search for hidden mathematical constants like pi or the golden ratio with a precision far beyond human capability. They can compare the symmetry of a labyrinth against thousands of known geometric templates, searching for a match that unlocks its structural secret. But all this data is meaningless without a soul. The cold light of a scanner cannot understand the spiritual yearning behind a Byzantine knot or the political ambition in a heraldic beast. This is where the humanist enters, the scholar steeped in the history, the theology, and the poetry of the age. They are the ones who can look at a pattern of colors revealed by multispectral imaging and recognize it as a specific liturgical sequence, or hear the echo of a lost myth in the arrangement of stones. The true breakthrough happens in the conversation between these two worlds, when a data point from an algorithm meets a footnote in a crumbling text. It is this marriage of silicon and spirit, of laser scans and learned intuition, that finally allows us to sit beside the ancient master, to see the grid they saw, and to understand the profound message they were so desperate to pass into the future. These small, cryptic carvings are the fingerprints of history, tucked into the corner of a cathedral's paving stone or hidden within the complex tracery of a cloister floor. You find them, a simple chiseled symbol. A letter, a compass, a stylized bird. To the casual eye, they are little more than ancient graffiti, but to the initiated, they were a complete and functioning language. These are the mason's marks, the personal signatures of the artisans who built the medieval world. In an age where few could read or write, these symbols were a universal alphabet of craft. A mason would use his unique mark to sign his work, a claim of responsibility that determined his pay and ensured his standard of quality was met. But to see these marks only as time cards is to miss a deeper layer of intrigue. Some researchers now propose that this system was far more sophisticated. What if these marks were not just signatures, but a coded lexicon? A specific mark, like a set of chisels, could denote the mason's rank as a master craftsman. Another symbol, perhaps a leaf, might secretly indicate the type of stone used, its origin and quality understood by any guild brother who saw it. The most compelling theory involves warnings. Imagine a mason discovering a hidden flaw in a stone, an internal crack that could compromise the structure decades later. He could not scrawl a note. Instead, he might carve a small, specific mark near the flaw, a silent alert to future generations of builders that this stone required watching. This transforms a simple signature into a safety protocol whispered across the centuries. But the greatest mystery asks if these individual symbols could be combined. If you were to map every mark in a specific chapel, reading them in the order they were laid, would they spell out a message entirely separate from the building? A sequence of marks might chronicle a local political dispute the guild was involved in, or record the passing of a beloved master. It could be a simple story, a joke, or a piece of profound wisdom passed from father to son through the medium of stone. Each marked slab becomes a word, and the entire floor a potential paragraph from a lost diary of the common man, a hidden narrative waiting for someone to learn its grammar. These floors did more than just hide messages, they worked on the mind itself. Modern science is now catching up to what ancient builders may have known intuitively. Environmental psychology reveals that our surroundings have a direct and measurable impact on our mental state, and the patterns under our feet are a crucial part of that equation. The repetitive, symmetrical designs so common in sacred and royal spaces are not just pleasing to the eye, they are balm for the brain. Our minds are pattern recognition machines, and when we encounter perfect order, it can trigger a deep sense of calm, a quieting of mental noise. This is the psychological power of the code, a non-verbal language designed to guide your feelings and your focus. Think about the two very different experiences of walking a labyrinth versus standing before a radiating star pattern. The labyrinth forces a slow, deliberate pace, its winding path a physical form of meditation that pulls you inward, encouraging introspection and quieting a racing mind. In contrast, a grand, symmetrical star pattern with lines exploding from a central point does the opposite. It pulls your gaze and your consciousness toward that singular center, creating a feeling of awe and pulling your attention away from yourself and towards something greater. This was a subtle yet brilliant form of environmental programming. The architects were not just building spaces, they were crafting experiences. They were using the floor as a tool to induce a specific state of mind, preparing a visitor for prayer, for judgment, or for an audience with a king. The true message embedded in the stone might not always be a story or a date. Sometimes, the most important code is the emotional and psychological journey the pattern compels you to take, a silent architect for your state of mind. A vast empire could be held within the polished marble of a single palace floor. In the grand courts of the Mughal rulers, from the Red Fort to the dream city of Fatehpur Sikri, artisans translated geography into art, creating what some scholars believe are magnificent cartographic puzzles. Imagine a courtier stepping across a sea of white marble, his path crossing veins of red sandstone that flow like the great Ganges and Yamuna rivers. A cluster of dark green serpentine stone might represent a dense forest, while a precise grid of black slate could chart the orderly fields of a conquered province. These were not maps for finding your way through the wilderness. They were declarations of dominion, a symbolic portrait of an empire rendered in jasper and jade. To walk across this surface was to traverse the Mughal world itself, a constant, unspoken reminder that every river, every city, and every road belonged to the emperor whose throne rested at the very center of this stone universe. Decoding this requires more than just recognizing shapes. You must understand the Mughal vision of order, their belief that a well-ordered state was a reflection of cosmic harmony. The perfect symmetry of the geometric patterns was not just beautiful, it was a political statement asserting that the emperor's control was as natural and as flawless as the laws of mathematics. A visiting ambassador would not need to be told of the empire's vastness. He would feel it with every step, his journey across the hall mirroring a journey across the subcontinent. This transforms the floor from a passive surface into an active participant in the theater of power. What appears as abstract beauty is, in fact, a frozen manifesto, a claim of absolute authority written in the most durable ink imaginable, a language of control spoken through the arrangement of stone. The same sacred numbers that blaze in the cathedral's great rose window are echoed in the stone beneath your feet. Look up at that magnificent wheel of stained glass, and you see a symphony of numerology, a cosmic diagram built from numbers that held the keys to divine truth for the medieval mind. Now look down. The floor is not a separate creation. It is the foundational verse of that same numerical hymn, the threefold nature of the Holy Trinity, embodied in the triangular patterns of the tiles. The four evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, represented in a quartet of stone panels framing a central motif. The 7 sacraments and 7 heavenly virtues might be encoded in a sequence of 7 different colored stones repeating along a processional path. Even the 12 apostles could find their expression in the 12 concentric circles of a pavement labyrinth or the 12 sides of a geometric star. This was not a random act of decoration. It was a deliberate and profound act of architectural harmony. The entire building, from the ground you walked on to the vaults that seemed to touch heaven, was conceived as a single, unified symbolic system. A pattern based on the number 8, for instance, was powerfully associated with rebirth and resurrection, for it was on the 8th day, the day after the Sabbath, that Christ rose from the tomb. So a baptismal font set within an octagonal floor pattern was not just a pretty shape, it was a theological statement in stone, proclaiming the promise of new life with every baptism performed there. This numerical code was the invisible architecture that held the spiritual meaning of the place together. The floor served as the literal and symbolic anchor for this celestial mathematics, grounding the abstract perfection of heaven in the solid, enduring reality of the earth. To walk across it was to traverse a living calculator, each step a silent recitation of a creed written not in words, but in the timeless language of number and form. Yet the thrill of the hunt demands a moment of sober reflection. For every floor that whispers a secret, another was designed simply to declare wealth or to follow a fashionable trend. We must tread carefully, separating the compelling theory from the romantic fiction. A persistent danger in this field is what logicians call the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. Imagine a marksman who fires a bullet at a blank barn wall and then paints a target around the hole. We can easily fall into the same trap, spotting a meaningful pattern in what was, for the original artisan, a purely aesthetic choice. That spiral in a Roman mosaic might be a profound symbol of the soul's journey, or it might just be a spiral. This is not to dismiss the possibility of hidden codes, but to refine our search. The most credible interpretations are those supported by multiple lines of evidence. Does a geometric pattern in a Moorish palace align with mathematical texts from the same period and region? Does the specific animal in a Byzantine floor appear in contemporary sermons or theological manuals as a recognized symbol? We must also respect the known limits of the craftsman's technical knowledge. Attributing a deep understanding of calculus to a medieval guild without any corroborating proof ventures into the realm of fantasy. The true challenge is to hold two ideas in our minds at once. We can preserve our sense of wonder, our belief that these artisans were embedding their worldviews into stone, while also applying rigorous scholarly skepticism. The most profound truth may be that these floors are a complex tapestry woven from both profound meaning and simple human artistry. Our quest is not diminished by this balance. It is deepened, ensuring that the codes we believe we have deciphered are not merely echoes of our own desires, but genuine messages from the past. The hunt for these hidden messages is only just beginning, a field ripe with possibility. New technologies are giving us eyes to see what was once invisible. LiDAR scanning, for instance, uses lasers from aircraft to map the ground's surface, stripping away forests and modern cities to reveal the ghostly outlines of ancient structures and the geometric patterns of their buried floors. This allows us to peer through time without ever lifting a shovel. At the same time, artificial intelligence offers a different kind of vision. We could train sophisticated algorithms on thousands of known floor patterns, teaching them the visual language of symbols across cultures. This digital scholar could then scour global databases, spotting a shared geometric motif between a temple in Cambodia and a palace in Persia, a connection a single human researcher might never make in a lifetime of work. But no machine can do this alone. The real breakthroughs will come from a chorus of voices, a collaboration where a historian's knowledge of a royal dynasty meets a materials expert's analysis of stone pigments and a computer scientist's algorithm for pattern recognition. This interdisciplinary conversation is the master key, and the map for this new age of discovery is vast, pointing to countless unexamined sites. The intricate pavements of Southeast Asian temples, the painted floors of pre-Columbian American complexes, the vast courtyards of African kingdoms, all of these hold untold stories waiting for their first reader. The next decade promises tools and partnerships we can barely conceive of today, a convergence of science and art that could finally decipher the most stubborn and elegant codes. The dialogue with the past is not ending. It is entering its most exciting chapter, ensuring the secrets beneath the marble will captivate and challenge us for generations. Our journey across these coded landscapes reveals a world where art, science, and spirit were one seamless fabric. The labyrinth at Chartres, the infinite stars of the Alhambra, the celestial maps of Rome, and the theological floors of Byzantium all speak to a unified vision of existence. Our ancestors did not separate the pursuit of mathematical truth from the expression of spiritual devotion or the exercise of political power. They poured this unified understanding into the most durable canvas they had, the ground beneath their feet. These patterns are a testament to a profound and universal symbolic thinking, a deep-seated human need to find order, embed meaning, and speak to the future. They challenge us to look beyond the surface of history, to see it not just in written texts and grand artifacts, but in the very arrangement of stone and tile we so often overlook. While we may never fully decipher every single hidden message, the quest itself transforms our relationship with the past. It enriches our understanding of human culture, reminding us that ingenuity and the desire to communicate transcend time and technology. So the next time you find yourself in a historic space, in a cathedral, a palace, or the ruins of an ancient home, pause for a moment. Remember to look down. You might just be standing on a secret, a silent story, a philosophical argument, or a map of the cosmos, all waiting patiently for a curious eye to uncover its purpose. What hidden flaw has captivated your imagination the most? Share your thoughts on the most fascinating mystery in the comments below, and subscribe for more journeys into the hidden corners of history. This journey into the language of stone does not have to end here. If these hidden codes have ignited your curiosity, the next chapter of discovery is waiting just outside your door. Visit a local museum, a historic library, or even an old church in your own community, but go with a new pair of eyes. Kneel down and examine the floors. Look for the rhythm in the repeating patterns. Search for a lone, oddly colored tile that breaks the symmetry. Ask yourself what this space was originally built for, and what message those who walked here centuries ago might have wanted to leave beneath their feet. For those ready to delve even deeper, we have compiled a list of fascinating books and online resources in the video description below. These will guide you further into the worlds of sacred geometry, the secret history of masonry, and the lost languages of art. We would love to hear about your own explorations. Have you ever stood on a floor that you felt was whispering a secret, a pattern that seemed to hold a meaning just beyond your grasp? Share your stories and theories in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey beneath the marble, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel for more content that unravels the great mysteries of our past, and tap the notification bell so you are always ready for the next adventure into history.